I recently joined a music production contest hosted by Andrew Huang. Basically, we had one sample and we had to make a music with it. We could add any instrument we wanted, but the sample needed to be the main ingredient, and in my song, the sample ended up being like 80% of the final result, as I used it to make my basses, leads, pads, and plugs. Due to my own schedule, I only had 3 weeks to do it, to create the instruments, compose the music, mix it, and even make a video to explain everything. So I had to be efficient, and today I'm showing you every techniques I used. But right off the bat, I knew I wanted to start with something aggressive. Then contrast it with something very soft. Then have a danceable part to induce head bobbing. And then have an epic mix of everything for the big finish. So first thing I did was to collect sound from the sample. So I did that by stretching some parts of it while trying to pitch them up and down and use different algorithms. So for example, this became this. Then I did this process again to get more sounds, which gave me this. Or for example, this part became this, which in turn became this. So I used these a lot in the glitchy part here in the beginning. I used a bunch of OTTs on them to make them more powerful. But on this track, for example, I used an envelope follower at the beginning of the chain linked to a gain knob at the end. Because the OTT lowers loud parts and raises squared parts. It is cool for sound design as it brings up texture, but it completely flattens the dynamics. So here, the envelope follower at the beginning checks the variations in volume of the original sound and apply it to a volume knob at the end of the chain. So I could use the OTT for the tone but maintain the dynamics. Then this is all held together by a distortion using Beam. It's a plugin I used a lot where you can put different effects nodes on different paths. So here on this group, it's 2 different distortions in parallel. I then doubled some of those hits with some synth I made. There is this one. It's this part looped in a simpler, with a chorus, an OTT, and a super VHS by Baby Audio for even more chorusing and a reverb. There is this wobble. It's a part of the sample I've stretched then looped. The wobble itself is done directly with the filter and the LFO inside the sampler. Then I used 3 flangers with 0 mounts, so they are static and acting like comb filters. Then a couple of pedal effects with the gain at 0 as well. And even at 0, it changes the sound, and I often like to duplicate the effects instead of pushing them harder. The effect is sometimes not the same. Then OTT and the same beam effect with 2 distortions in parallel. Then I've linked a MIDI envelope in the beginning here to a gain knob at the end of the chain here to cut it off after each note, because with so much compression and distortions, that's a lot of notes that can come up. For the drums, I sampled sounds from the side drum by Sonicware because in there the sounds are made with wavetables, so I thought that would work well in this genre. With them, I created 4 instrument tracks for the kicks, snares, cymbals, and toms, and set them up so they would generate random rhythms with random samples at random pitches. Okay, so to build this chain, I have an arpeggiator that plays quarter notes if I hold a key. Then a random effect that randomly changes the pitch of each note to select a random sound each time. And then I have another arpeggiator that is faster, so the sound that is selected can be played several times. Like here we'll hear 16th notes, but the sound will change every quarter note. Then I grouped all this and duplicated the chain to make a different variation of this rhythm in each one. Then chose the chain selection by velocity, distributed the ranges equally, and put a random velocity effect so each note would select a different chain. This means I had to put the velocity sensitive at 0 for every sampler in each drum rack, which is made easy with this copy value to siblings. And finally, I've put a last arpeggiator before the velocity effect, so a new velocity and a new chain would be selected with every half note. For more variety, I've mapped the transpose of each sampler to a macro, which is then controlled by a MIDI LFO effect set to random, so now every sample triggered would be different. I thought the chain was clever, but turns out it didn't work when the session was playing, so I had to screenshot this to re-import the audio. So I made a custom rhythm part with beats of these recordings. Then I filtered it, but the source is given by a plugin you may know. It's called Transit. I'm still on the version 1, but it's a great multi-effect. In this part there is this synth that I like. It's made of 2 layers. They are both the same part of the sample, combined with a low sine wave, and then distorted. Just because I think that any sound distorted against a sub can create interesting tones. And then I get rid of the sub with a high-pass filter. Then most of the tone actually comes from the octaves they are played at, and the 2 OTTs that crush them. The second layer is played 3 octaves below the first one, and weirdly that brings up more higher content. And then I use Super VHS again with its magic button and reverb to make it wider. Then I have a few plug instruments that are derived from the same sample. It's this one, which came from this, which I think was part of this originally that I stretched. So I've put it in a simpler and set up the envelope to have a pluck. And then I did the 3 tracks here that are very similar, as they all use Super VHS with the magic button for the chorusing effect, and Beam with a combination of reverbs and granular nodes to give this lush feel. Then the same pluck was used for the bass in the 4 to the floor part. But here the tone is given by 2 parallel aggressors, a plugin by Baby Audio that uses compression and saturation in parallel. Now for several transitions in the track, I've used the plugin Transit by Andrew Huang and Baby Audio. I used it here in the very beginning. I used it here at the end of the first part. There's this one before the end that is more subtle on the lead. And this one before the 4 to the floor. And this one is helped by a piano that I added. That's a stock sound from Ableton. Here I chopped the piano with a combination of a beat repeat and an auto pan that I automated to go on and off and follow the same rhythm, so some notes would be repeated and sliced at the same rate. That's something I used on the last part as well, as it is very chopped up. So that's here on the piano. And here on the plucks. In this part, I also used auto pans with a sine waveform to give kind of a wobble feel. That's on several tracks, all following the same rhythm to tie them all together. So that's on the leads here. And on the BBC Symphony Strings, that's a free plugin from Spitfire. And then on the group that contained all the melodic instruments, I automated a utility that just mutes everything, and an auto pan that chops everything on 16th notes. So in the end, it sounds like this. And with everything. Now the instruments I haven't talked about are a bit simpler. They are still made with, well, simplers. This lead is pretty much the same than the first bass I talked about, with a chorus and a Super VHS, with the magic button, some saturation and the reverb. This one has a phaser before a distortion, then a bunch of OTTs, and then a gate to control the noise. And the main lead here, that's a bit of the sample that I stretch with a spectral blur as a reverb, a chorus, an OTT, and a gate as well to control the noise. And this one I actually chopped by directly writing the MIDI notes. I thought that sounded better. And oh yeah, there's this last instrument at the very end. You know when you repeat a sound fast enough so it becomes a tone? I kinda did that with the sample. So that's a drum rack with the same beat of the sample on every pad, all playing at the same pitch, but I set the length of each loop so it repeats at the frequency of each note. So to build this, I looked up the frequency of each note, and for each of them, I calculated the length of one cycle in samples. That's the sample rate of your project, here 44,100 Hz, divided by the frequency of the note. Then on a sampler, you can see the start sample, so you can just add the length of one cycle to get the number of the end sample. Of course, I didn't calculate all that by hand, I'm not a psycho, so I did an automated Excel file instead. Then I made a system to scrub through the audio sample to find a good sounding part. I wanted to share this setup with you in case you wanted to try it, but unfortunately every time you load a new sample in there, it changes the length of the loop, so it gets broken. Well, I just wanted to see how it sounded, and honestly it didn't sound that good, but I left it in as some kind of a joke. Now, before wrapping this up and playing the full song, I would like to quickly share 5 plugins that helped me gain time during this challenge. So first is Beam. I think it really shines for sound design if you start a song with it, as it can really mangle your sound and give some inspiration. Then is Super VHS that I actually use quite regularly, mostly for its magic button. I really like it, and the magic button by itself exists as a free plugin, so you can grab it at no cost if you want to try it. Transit was a good help too. It's really a great multi-effect that can do a lot of things, and I particularly like the fact that there are so many presets in it. I still have to try the version 2, which apparently is insane, with even more effects, more presets, and different modes of using it. Vox Guru, which was a good surprise. It's originally for mixing vocals, but for this lead here, I thought that because it's the main instrument, it could be interesting to treat it just like a vocal. So I tried different presets to gain time, and it worked pretty well. And then Track Spacer, which is basically for sidechain compression, but it only ducks the frequencies present in the sidechain sound. So it's pretty nice to set priorities for different instruments in your mix. Like I want this instrument to go over this one, and this one over this two. And I know most people prefer using Soothe for this now, but I don't know, I find this one easier to use, it fits my workflow better, so I often use Track Spacer instead. So with all this being said, here's how it sounds. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you saw some useful tricks, and if you did, consider leaving a like, comment or subscribing. I have also shared some of the racks I've made for this project on my Patreon, where everything is available from $1. And big thanks to everyone already supporting the channel over there. I wish you all a great day or a great evening. Take care of yourself, take care of each other, and I'll see you next time. Bye!